Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the highly anticipated sequel to the 2015 film Sicario, that being Sicario Day of the Soldado. And what Sicario Day of the Soldado is essentially about is basically we do not center on Emily Blunt's character. This time we focus on both the characters of Gillick and Graver. And Graver is basically called in because basically the U.S. government has basically they've marked down cartels as terrorists, and basically they want to put an end to all this because it's just becoming way too dangerous, and they feel that Graver is the one to possibly put a stop to it. They tell him to go all out and do what he can to get these two cartels to finally go to war, and he enlists the help of Gillick, and basically the two of them kind of start this mission to kidnap this little girl from the rival cartel and basically get them to come after each other and finally instigate that war that they've wanted after all these years, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Sicario Day of the Soldado, I was very curious about this movie, to say the least. I wouldn't say I was hyped for it because I don't know, I really wasn't. The Sicario never felt like a movie that really needed a sequel. It felt like a standalone film. If you guys remember, that was a very surprising film for me. I didn't really think it looked that great from the trailers, and it greatly surprised me. It was a very grounded, very realistic, brutal take on a world that is all too similar to what we really know and what really does go down in this line of work, and what really does go down for someone who is hunting down a cartel, and just how gross and just disgusting of a job that can really be. And, you know, what the outcome of that can really do to someone, how someone can become so desensitized and things like that. And I was very interested in seeing what this film would explore, because I did really like the characters and things like that, but at the same time, I just didn't really know how this film was really going to be, if it was really going to justify its existence, and also the fact it was going to be a wide release. Was there sort of, you know, were they going to pander more to a Hollywood-type audience? And thankfully they didn't. Sicario Day of the Soldado is a really great sequel. I definitely did enjoy this movie a lot. It's definitely not as good as the first one, but I mean, who really expected it to be? But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And right off the bat, that's obviously one of the best things about this film. Just like the first one, this film is very well casted. I think really everyone did do a very good job here. But easily the standout of this movie, once again, is Benicio del Toro as Alejandro Gillick, who, for me at least, was the most compelling character of the first movie. Sure, Emily Blunt was kind of like the anchor of it, but he was easily the most intriguing. I mean, obviously, you know, from the first movie, we know that his family died, and we know that he has, in fact, gotten vengeance after the events, you know, of the first film, and I really love where they take him in this movie. This is someone who is a lot more unhinged, and he's just a lot more eager to really get this done. It kind of feels like that completion that he's really been leading up to. So he is a lot more intense in this film than he was in the first one. I think he did a really good job of that. They get into his backstory a lot more. We really did flesh out this character a lot, and where they end up going with him is quite shocking. It makes me very interested to see what else they can do with this character from here on out. And even in parts of this movie where it feels a bit disingenuous to the character, which we'll get to that in a little bit later, Del Toro really does bring it. He really does do a great job here, and I just really love what he brings as character. He really did go all out here. I think it was honestly even better than he was in the first one. I really did love him in this film. He was fantastic. And then Josh Brolin as Graver absolutely stepped it up from the first movie. Not that I didn't love him in the first movie, but the first movie, I saw him more as a crooked cop who really was good at what he does and things like that, and it very much doesn't play by the rules. This guy, no, this guy is definitely someone you don't want to mess with. I mean, right in the beginning of the film, there's a scene where he's interrogating this guy, and he's telling him that if he doesn't give him the answers he wants, he's going to airstrike him and his family's entire home and basically blow them all up, and he's very serious about this. He really wants to put an end to this in any way possible. He doesn't really care about the consequences. He doesn't really care care about the casualties. He really just wants this one thing done. And that can be a hard character to latch onto, but Brolin really does bring a lot of layers to this character. You get the sense that, no, this guy isn't a great person, but he definitely is someone who knows the right things to do. He is the right person to enlist to, you know, take down this cartel and to, you know, basically organize everything. And I really did love getting into him. You know, Josh Brolin is just having such a killer year, and this is yet again another fantastic role for him. He was great here once again. Someone else I really do want to highlight, though, is Isabela Moner as the character. Once again, Isabela. I don't know why she's playing a girl named Isabela in every fucking movie she's in, but as you guys know, I wasn't, you know, the hugest fan of Transformers last night. I didn't hate it like most people did, but I just thought it was a very boring, generic movie. But she was definitely one of the bright spots, but I thought she did a really good job in that film. Here, I thought she was even better. I really did love this character. This is someone who, right off the bat, she has very much been hardened. She knows the harsh realities of this world. She frequently is ridiculed for being the daughter of someone who's in a cartel, and she is not afraid to get her hands dirty, and I really did like getting into this character. Her and Del Toro especially worked very well together. He sees a lot of, you know, we really do see the contrast to him and the daughter that he used to have, and I really did like getting into that. I thought they worked very well together overall. Their relationship is probably the most important part of this film, and I think she really did a great job here. I think, you know, Moner, obviously it's very questionable, the whole Dora the Explorer thing, but you can see they definitely do see something in her, and I really do hope she continues to do good stuff after this movie, because she really kind of blew me away here. And then everyone else that also did a really good job. Elijah Rodriguez, I also really do want to highlight. He plays this character, Miguel, who also is this kid who's kind of caught up in the whole cartel situation. And I thought he definitely did a really good job. I really did like his character in the film. Catherine Keener, I really did not know what purpose she was going to serve here, but she does a really good job in this film. She basically is someone who's called in to assist Brolin when he is going too far. And I really did like the contrast between these two. She's someone who's very focused on getting things done, making sure it gets done clean, and that no stains are left, and that basically, you know, everything just works out perfectly. And Brolin isn't as concerned with that. He just wants to end this. He doesn't really care if it's messy or not, and I really do love the contrast between these two. Some of the best scenes in this movie are just the conversations that those two would have, and I think she really did a great job here, as did the rest of the cast. Thought everyone here was very well casted, just like the first film. This one had even more standout performances, and I just thought all across the map, everyone did a really great job here. Now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that is something, once again, I was concerned about. Denis Villeneuve is not directing this film. He's one of the best, I think, talents working today. Every single thing he's done, I have absolutely fallen in love with. I have not given any of his movies a rating lower than an A-, and I was hoping that this movie would still be able to be really great without him, and I was really worried, because, like I said, this was a major release, that they were going to go with a more Hollywoodized tone. They would try to turn this into more of an action movie, and gratefully, they really don't do that. This is definitely just as brutal, and I think even a little bit more brutal than the first one really was, because this one, the first movie was told from Emily Blunt's character. This was someone who wasn't really used to this landscape. She didn't really understand, the harsh realities of what she was really getting herself into, and the audience as well did not know this. Now, in this film, we are much more prepared for what we're about to see, but the film goes even deeper into that, and there's some things in this film that definitely are very hard to watch, and I really do credit Stefano Silima for really going there, because he very much does retain the brutal, sort of, like I said, bleak world that Villeneuve was trying to craft in his first film, and I think he does a really good job with that here. But the writing also, I thought also was very well done. The main storyline in this film I really do like, but that's just scratching the surface of what this movie really is, because this movie is far more complex than the first one was. The first movie, one of my only complaints with that first film, which there really aren't many, but my biggest complaint was that the story, as good as it was, didn't particularly feel that interesting. Like, on paper, it's not that interesting of a story. We'd seen it done a lot of times, and the only reason that movie was so great is because it told it in a way that felt genuine and felt like it you know, really worked with the acting and things like that, and it just felt like the real world. This movie is far more complex than that. It really dives a lot more into the harsh realities of someone, particularly a child. We really do see a lot with both Isabela Moner and Elijah Rodriguez's characters. The like I said, the harsh realities they have to endure, the circumstances that they have, their lives are kind of shooken up, and they can't just be normal kids. And the thing that's sad is that there is nothing Hollywood about this. This happens every single day for someone who is living in this kind of lifestyle, and it's just very hard to watch and very hard to stomach. But this film does do it in a way that, like I said, it's very unapologetic in that way. It's telling you this is how it is. Don't try. We're not going to sugarcoat this at all. We're going to show you exactly what happens, and they did that very well. I really did love the writing, and like I said, you really are anticipating this sort of gang war. You don't really know where it's going to go. You know they're going to try to do what they can to instigate these two cartels, and that right off the bat is a very interesting plot point, and I really did love that. But at the same time, the stakes feel a lot more higher at this point because Graver's job is on the line. They recognize that he is a crooked cop, and he's got himself involved in some stuff that maybe he shouldn't be involved in. He's a lot more unhinged in this movie. Same with Gillick. Like I said, he is much more focused on a means to an end, and I think they did that very well here. I just really loved establishing the moral conflict of this film, and that's some of the best stuff about this movie overall, is just the conflicting agendas that a lot of these characters really do have, and that I really did appreciate that. And like I said, the way that Isabel does fall into the story, she fits in, I think, very well, of her being this daughter of the rival cartel. Her story, like I said, it's quite complex because she's someone who comes from the wrong side of the tracks, but she is trying to do right. You know, she's in private school and things like that. The first scene you see of her, she's like wailing on this girl because of the fact that she was bullying her for being she calls it a narco whore, and it perfectly just gives us a lot of insight into her character, and that's something this film does very well. It knows what to show, but it also knows when to cut away, and they did that very well here. They never try to sensationalize this. Nothing about this feels, like I said, Hollywoodized, and I really could not be more pleased when it comes to that. That was something I was very worried about going into this film, and I'm glad to see that's really not the case here, because I think as a whole, it actually was very well crafted, and I think they did a very good job with that. However, the writing is still not perfect. There are a few missteps in this film that weren't there in the first movie. Right off the bat, like I said, the main story in this film is not the only storyline we're dealing with. We're also focusing on this character, named Miguel, and while his story is very interesting, he's sort of this kid who he has to try to provide for his family, and he can either get a job or he can go with his cousin into some shady dealings, and you can kind of figure out where it's going to go. That's not my problem. My problem is that this story feels very rushed to everything else in comparison. The main story is very slow-paced, and it takes us a long time for things to really get moving. His story, it's revved up immediately, and it feels like there's a lot of stuff that we did miss out on. I don't know if stuff was cut out of this movie, but it does very much feel that way. It feels like there's a large chunk of his story that is a bit removed. So while I did care about him, whenever we'd come back, I just didn't feel as much of an impact as I really wanted to, and I do feel that was kind of missing a bit. And you know, his plot, it is integral. Where he ends up going in this film, I'm very interested in. There's he goes in a direction at the end of this movie that I really was not expecting, but I'm really interested in seeing where he's actually going to go, because they do very much set up a Sicario 3. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I do think they actually did a good job with setting that up. It's just the road to getting there was just a little bit rushed, and I just did not feel as attached to his character, unfortunately. Also, towards the end of this movie, a lot of people talk about the third act, and yeah, there are definitely some questionable choices that are made, particularly of one character. There's a character that makes this choice, and I'm not 100% sure if it really worked with what we knew about that character prior. However, I fully recognize that without this character would not have as much development as they really do, because because of what they really do end up going through, this character feels a lot more fleshed out than they did in the first movie. And I'm not going to get into who that is. If you guys seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure if it works in context of the story. But I will say, I'm glad they stuck with this choice because it actually did make sense towards the end of the film where they end up going with it. However, there's another choice made at the very end that I really did not understand. And I don't know if it necessarily worked. But I am interested in seeing where they do go with it, and I do think that did lower the film a little bit, and I don't want you guys to think that, you know, the film was bad after that, because that's definitely not the case at all. I was just kind of questioning where it was really going, and it seemed like it was kind of losing focus a bit. However, where they end up going with it, I am interested in seeing, you know, what really comes of it in the next film. But the cinematography here is still really great. This film really is pulling no punches whatsoever. It is giving you a very dark insight into this world right off the bat in the first film. Literally one of the most intense scenes I think I've seen all year. I mean, it was very similar to the first one. It was very hard to look at it, but it was one of those things where I also couldn't look away because you're just in awe of the pure chaos and just the pure destruction that's really going on. I mean, just thinking about what's really happening and how this translates to real world and things that we do hear about all the time, it is quite frightening, and the film isn't trying to justify it at all. It's not trying to say, oh, this is a good thing. It's trying to say, yeah, this is horrible, and we need to do something about it, and I thought they established that very well. And sure, Roger Deakins is not, of course, doing the cinematography anymore, but I do still think the cinematography holds up quite well. There's one shot towards the end of the film involving Benicio del Toro's character, and honestly, I thought it was on par with what we got in the first movie. Now, look, there's no, like, panning shots of the city or anything like that, or these amazing, like, aerial shots like we got in the first film. No, that's not here, but I think they did a good enough job. Like, sure, anything, when you don't have Roger Deakins, I think anything pales in comparison, but they did do a good job with what they have. I don't know exactly who was the one who, you know, composed all the shots in this film, but I thought it definitely was very well done. I really love some of the scenes in here, and I don't think they're definitely not up there with, like I said, what Deakins did, but they definitely do hold their own, and there are some shots that really are sticking with me, and I do think they did a really good job with it. The action scenes as well, you don't really want to call them action scenes because these are not at all meant to entertain. These are not at all meant to, you know, put you on the edge of your seat. These are meant to just show you what they really are going through and really incite that conflict. So it's really not an action scene. You're just seeing when actions are involved, but they really do up the ante in this film. I mean, like I said, Graver and Gillick are much more adamant about putting an end to this, so because of that, the intensity feels a lot grander, and they did a really good job just adding tension to all that. I really was happy with that overall. The score, again, Johan Johansson, unfortunately, he did pass away before he could make the score for this film, but the score is still there. Just hearing that Sicario theme in general, it definitely does get me back into the world. I think the score was very well done. Nothing extraordinary, but the Sicario theme is still there, and it's still great, and I really do love it. The pacing of this movie, yes, it is a little bit off at points. There are some points where it is feeling like it drags a bit, particularly in the second half, but eventually it does get there, and I wouldn't really say the film was ever boring. There just were a couple parts where it was a little slow here and there. Overall, though, guys, I really could not be happier with the sequel. For a film that I very much was very much against, and I didn't really think we needed it, this turned out to be a much more, I think, important film than I really would have expected. It's definitely not the first film. It's not nearly as good. It's a much different film altogether, but it's not trying to be. It's trying to be a film that is establishing a little bit more characters. It's establishing a little bit more of the environment overall. It's getting you more into the inner conflict, and I really did love seeing that. I think the performances are still great. I think there's some really interesting choices towards the end of this film. Things that really make me excited for a Sicario 3. I never thought I'd say that, but yeah, bring on the third movie. I'm very interested in seeing where they do go with it. Like, the ending of this movie, it's very sequel-bait. Like, it's very evident that they're going to make a third movie and that they really want to set up the next film, but it ends in a way that makes me genuinely interested to see really where they do end up going with it. Like I said, guys, it's not as good as the first movie, but it's definitely way better than I think it had any right to be overall. It's just as brutal. It's just as gritty. It does go into a place in the third act that I'm not entirely sure if it worked, but in the end, I do think it was an interesting choice overall, and I'm just happy this film didn't try to be a rehash of the first one. It really did try to do something different, and I really do appreciate a sequel for doing that overall. And I am going to give Sicario, Day of the Soldado, overall, a B+. So over, guys, in my review, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. Let me know what you guys thought of this one overall. Left your thoughts. And like I said, definitely really enjoyed this one. Very excited to see where it does go in the third movie. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.